And so your challenge is you have to identify your top 5 and then find a way to spend more time with them so that will help grow your mindset. What's up, heroes? Now listen, if you've ever felt stuck in place and like you're not making progress fast enough, then this video is for you. Today I'm going to show you a quick process of how to think bigger, how to think broader, how to think more boldly so that you can, make leaps and bounds of progress and not kind of just make these small incremental advances. Now, this is all based on the concept of board of directors. If you're familiar with the board of directors, it's more commonly used for big companies, Fortune 500 companies, and they have, 10 to 20 people that all sit on the board. And what the board is it's a group of people that come together a couple of times a year and they all talk high level strategy of how to steer the company in the right direction. Now, the beauty of a board is that it's people from all walks of life. You got a finance guy, and maybe you have a tech person, maybe you have an operations person, maybe you have a customer service person, and collectively, with all their different experiences and all their different backgrounds and perspectives, together they're able to think outside of the box. And now that's the premise of a board. And if it works for a Fortune 500 company, I was thinking, why can't it work for us on a personal level? And so what I'm about to show you, you can use this for every area of your life. And it all comes down with you having your own personal board of directors. And this will help you get out of your own limited mind frame and start to think outside of that box. Now, let me show you a little bit how it works. First thing you want to do is you want to just come up with your 5. You can have more than 5, but at least 5 people that you really respect. Now, these should be people that you know, that you've interacted with, that you've engaged with, and I'll tell you why in a minute when we get into the exercise. But someone that you have exposure to, you've had some experience with, that you really look up to. Maybe they have a really successful business that you really admire. Maybe they have a really good financial acumen and you really admire that. Maybe they're very intelligent, wise, and astute in marketing or in a particular area and you really admire that. So pick 5 people, your top 5 people that you look up to, that they're already at a position that you want to be in. That's probably the best metric. 5 people that they're already at a place in life that you want to be in. And then write them out, name them out. And so we're going to take the first step of this process and we're just going to come up with our top 5. And so these are actual people that are on my board of directors. So I'll choose Seth, Jeff, Aaron, Carl, and Gabe. So I've got 5 people. Now these are people that I respect for not just in business, but for everything. One of these gentlemen I put them on a pedestal for that area of life. And they all come from various backgrounds. Some come from tech, some come from finance, some come from real estate. So they have a very, diverse array of backgrounds. But these people are at a place in life that I see myself, a place where I need guidance, a place where I could use and leverage their help. And so what I do is once I've identified these 5 people, just like how a board for a big Fortune 500 company, they come together and have board meetings where they talk about strategy and each person gets to talk about what their view and their perspective is to handle the situation or to direct the company. Well, just like how a company does that, a Fortune 500 company does that, once I know, who's on my board, I can have these board meetings in my mind. So the thing is, I ask you to come up with people that you've had experience with, people you've engaged with, people that you've had some interaction with, and that gives you some perspective on how they think. And so now, if you've had interaction with these people, then you can pretty much kind of get into their mindset a little bit. And so I remember first time I ever met Seth. Seth is this $1 billion real estate agent. And I asked Seth, I was like, how did you find your initial success? Like, what was the thing, your tipping point, the thing that really pushed you over the edge to really blow up your brand and your real estate career? And he told me this crazy story about, he was just starting out as an agent. He wanted to be known as the luxury agent in this particular part of town. So he went out and he rented 2 helicopters. And he flew around town with these 2 helicopters, and one helicopter was a film crew filming him in the other helicopter hanging over the city, talking about how he flies his clients around in helicopters to identify luxury real estate all around town. And then he posted that video, and that video went viral. And that is how he started to build his brand as a luxury real estate agent. And so he's telling me this story, and I'm like, wow, like that is so huge. I would never even imagine to think about something like that. But now I get a glimpse of how Seth thinks. And so now when I encounter a problem, I can have this virtual meeting in my mind about how would Seth handle this problem. That's the beauty of this process, is that now I can get out of my mindset and get in and ask, how would they handle this situation that I'm facing? If they were running my business, if Seth was running my business, how would Seth, what would he be doing right now? I can have a virtual meeting and I can come up with like my top 3 things that Seth would do in that situation. So I have situation thing number 1, thing number 2, thing number 3. Boom. Now I go to Jeff. And Jeff runs one of the most successful health food franchises in the nation, one of the fastest growing health food franchises in the nation. He's a whiz at creating scalable processes that he can then scale his business to infinity. And so I can say, okay, how would Jeff, if Jeff was running my business right now, what's the first, second, and third thing Jeff would be doing? And the minute I put myself into Jeff's shoes, all of a sudden I get out of my limited scope. I get out of my mind frame, and it gives me permission to think bigger, to think as Jeff would think. And I'll say, okay, what Jeff would do, number 1, number 2, and number 3. He would create a scalable process. He would hire an awesome team, and then he would hire a COO to run the whole shop, right? Boom. Now I get into Aaron's shoes. Okay, Aaron is a whiz at technology, and he thinks crazy big. The first thing he would do is he would create a software, and then he would get a trademark. And so the minute I've identified these people, and I've had experience with each one of those people, so I know how they think. And so now I can go through and get out of my shoes and ask myself, if they were in this situation, how would they handle it? And the minute I ask how they would handle it, it gives me permission to come up with bigger ideas, bolder ideas. I get out of my limited mind frame and I start thinking as them. These are people I really respect, and I already know they think bolder. And so now I can think as them. And so now I can take a step back, and I've done this exercise and I've come up with at least 3 things for each person of how they would be running my business. And now I have 15. I have 15 bigger, bolder ideas. Now what I want to do is just identify the ones that I could really focus on. I'll identify 5, the 5 next big moves that I can make. And so I'll say, I'll take this first idea from Seth, was a really good idea that I think he would do. This one and this one from Jeff would be awesome. This one from Carl that I know is an awesome idea. And this, I have the 5 most reasonable ideas from this big vision board, from my virtual board of directors. And then I'll just start to prioritize. What's the next logical step that I can take? So the first thing I could do is this idea that I think that Seth would do. The second one would be this one from Carl. The third one would be this one from Gabe. The fourth one would be this one from Jeff. And the 5th one would be that one. Now I have my 5 next big steps that I should take. Things that I wouldn't have thought of on my own. But by having a virtual board of directors in my head, I had this board meeting. And out of that board meeting came the next 5 biggest moves I can make to drastically grow my business. Again, you can do this process with family life. I really respect Carl. Carl is one of the ultimate family men. Matter of fact, I do this. Carl, the first time I met Carl, he told me about what he did for his wife. It was his wife's birthday, and he went all out and planned this big 3-day extravaganza that it was way beyond anything I would ever think of. And I was like, wow, you do that for your wife on her birthday? And now every time my wife's birthday is coming up, I say, what would Carl do? What would Carl do for his wife's birthday? And it gets me out of my limited scope, my limited mind frame. And now I step in as Carl and say, oh, Carl would do this. He would rent a hot air balloon. He would have a singing telegram sent to her office. He would send not just 1 dozen, but 4 dozen roses. Like immediately I can think bigger because Carl is the one influencing that decision, not my limited scope. So this is how you do it. You have a personal board of directors. Now let's go back to step 1, coming up with your top 5. The only way you can come up with your top 5 is if you've had enough interaction with these people to know how they think. The power of this exercise is you have to know how they think. And that comes from having constant interaction with these people, enough interaction for you to be able to gain enough context to be able to use their mindset. Now, the only way you can do that is if you schedule constant interaction with these people. So your homework, my challenge for you is to identify your top 5 and then schedule reoccurring time with these people. Every one of these people on my board of directors, I don't just happen to walk past them and see them. I have reoccurring times scheduled on my calendar with them. And so initially when I identified them as that I wanted them to be on my board of directors, I actually wrote them a letter. I wrote each person a letter saying, hey, I really respect you in all these areas, and I really would value spending more time with you. Is it okay if we meet on a once a month basis? And each person said yes, and then we actually scheduled it in our calendar, and on a recurring basis, we have these regular mentor meetings. And through those meetings, through those interactions is how I get enough context from them to know how they would think in certain situations. That's how I'm growing my mindset, is by spending enough time with them, with their big mindsets, that it's bleeding over into me. And so your challenge is you have to identify your top 5 and then find a way to spend more time with them so that'll help grow your mindset. And so your homework is identify your top 5 and then schedule reoccurring time with those people. Reach out to them. Tell them you really respect them and ask them, can we get together for coffee on a weekly basis? Can we schedule a Zoom call on a monthly basis? Whatever the frequency you want, but schedule reoccurring time with these people, and that's how you'll get to grow your mindset, to think bigger and badder so that you can make progress by leaps and bounds. All right, now it's your turn, heroes. Go out there and save the world. See you guys.